It is a fascinating time in Canada women's basketball, and we've got the expert, Hayley McGoldrick, here to talk all about it. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and happy Thursday to you. I am Howard Megdal, welcoming you to Locked On Women's Basketball. I appreciate you making us your first listen every day, showing up for us the way we show up for you. Over 200,000 of you listening in July alone. We are here for you 6 days a week. And when I say we, it is not just me, it is the entire crew over at thenexthoops.com, where we cover the past, present, and future of women's basketball. United States, yes, but also overseas as well. Go ahead and subscribe. Get our emails. They just all come to you. It's this constant stream of women's basketball coverage, over 100 pieces every month, $9 a month, $72 a year. Best investment you're ever going to make, because the world of women's basketball just keeps getting bigger. And that's why, among other reasons, I am delighted that Hayley McGoldrick has joined our crew. She is covering the Canadian national teams. Why am I saying multiple? We'll get into that. Also, Toronto's WNBA franchise. It'll be here before you know it. 2026 is around the corner. Hayley, when you think about the current moment for Canadian women's basketball, how much bigger is it in your mind than it was even, let's say, a year or two ago?
I think it's huge because, like you said, we're getting a WNBA team, but we don't have one yet. And so having our national teams be on that stage front and center, even having the Canadians that we have in the WNBA, we only have 4 of them, but it means so much to us Canadians to just have that representation, because we've never had that. You know, we have women's rec leagues, but we don't have a women's pro league here. There's not a ton of representation. So having the women's teams that we've had that have done so well, obviously Tokyo 2020 wasn't the best result, but they won AmeriCup bronze last year. They finished 4th at the FIBA Women's World Cup in 2022. It's been phenomenal to have this Canadian national team growing and growing. And I think that the success of this team as well has really helped kind of push for more women's basketball in Canada. And that's kind of how the WNBA Toronto team came about, was that people saw people show up for the WNBA Canada game last year in Toronto, this year in Edmonton, and it's just been huge. It's continuing to grow, and when Canadians are presented the opportunity to watch and support women's basketball, they always show up.
You'll forgive a point of personal privilege, but your role covering it should not be understated, and the work you've done on the journalism side is really significant. When Toronto was the official designation, I literally talked to my edit staff and said, I would like to find a Hayley McGoldrick type to cover it for us. So the fact that it is literally you is something I'm really excited about and cannot wait to read all about it. So we'll get into that, because I know you were down in Phoenix for All-Star Weekend, and we're able to talk to folks about that as well. Segment 1, we're going to talk about the 5-on-5 team right now, 3-on-3 in segment 2. And just sort of by way of introduction, as you mentioned, there's been a ton of success in Canadian 5-on-5 over the last few years. To my mind, I went into this Olympics with a pecking order, with the idea that I think USA is obviously favored for gold in terms of the team that they bring in. But to me, Canada and Australia are right there as the leading challengers. And so to see Canada now, for those who may not have seen, lost to Australia, lost to France, so obviously a very good French team as well, but now 0-2 and in some real danger here of not being able to get out of the group stage. Take me through kind of what your top line observations were about why those are struggles, or even whether you view them as struggles, compared to, again, 2 very good teams they've played so far.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in both games, the game against France and the game against Australia, is the shooting. You're not going to win basketball games when you're taking 60 shots and you're only making 21 of them. Absolutely. We saw it against France. So many shots not falling. But then it's not even just the long range shots, it's the easy layups as well that, you're not getting those baskets. And those are ones that really need to be 100% of the time you're getting those layups. And against France, it wasn't happening. Against Australia, it was a little bit better. Even, a player like Hayley Alexander, she's a player who's kind of a double-double machine. She's great. But even this game, she shot 3 of 7. A lot of the points were coming from free throws for Canada in this game. A lot of the shooting, obviously, Bridget Carleton against Australia, she played amazing. She hit 5 triples. This is clearly her best game of competition. I mean, they've only played 2, but she really broke out in this game. Kia Nurse played well as well. But I think, number one, you really need the whole team to show up, and it really just hasn't been happening for Canada. The first game, it was Shea Colley and Kia Nurse, and everybody else kind of was struggling a little bit to find the basket. And now this game, it was Kia Nurse and Bridget Carleton, and Kayla Alexander was there a little bit. It was definitely a better showing than the game against France, but still the shooting needs to improve 100%. Like that's the biggest thing, is that you're not going to win basketball games when you're shooting just over 30%. Like that's definitely not helpful to anybody on the floor. It just absolutely needs to be better. You saw against France, they literally made history in the fact that no team, men's or women's, had been held to 2 points in a quarter at the games, but the Canadian women's team did that.
It blew my mind. It really did. And, I want to drill down into a lot of what you said, because I think you hit the nail on the head with where the issues have been. 2 points in a quarter for a team that has, like you said, so much talent on the floor. Part of it, you talked about it, this Kayla Alexander, who I've had the privilege of covering the WNBA as well, and a double-double machine. Well, she had 6 boards in that game, or 6 points and 10 boards in the game against France. They out-rebounded France. They were unable to do that against Australia. 42-31 gap on the boards, and Kayla had only 5 rebounds in that time. So it seems to me like, not to sort of put the pressure on just one player, but she does have to become that, right? For them to advance and for them to maximize, they need Kayla Alexander to be, truly a 14-10 player rather than someone who is rebounding or is scoring. But the other point that is really critical to me is Bridget Carleton is a willing shooter now, to use the phrase of Cheryl Reeve, her club team coach. And there's something that it took a while to see. She was willing to take shots at Iowa State, in the WNBA, and even in international play. She wasn't always hunting her own shot. So that seems like a big development today, even though it happened in a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think she's a lot more confident in her shot. That's the biggest thing. Like, I understand there's definitely games where you're going to go, 3 of 11 from the 3-point line, and it sucks because you're taking all these shots. But yeah. I think the biggest thing is that she's just not giving up. She took 7 and she hit 5 of them. She had an amazing game. So yeah, you're going to have those games where you're only going 2 of 10, 3 of 11. But I think the biggest thing is that she just doesn't give up, because, it is a cliche, but, you're going to miss the shots you don't take. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that she's really leaned into the role of knowing she's more of a leader on this Canada basketball squad as well. You've seen over the years a few top players like Kim Gaucher have retired and things like that. And so, it's a younger generation, but they're kind of stepping up now into those leadership roles. And she was there in Tokyo. She was there at the World Cup. She's had so much international experience now that it's like, there's trust when Bridget has the ball in her hand. So take that shot. And it clearly paid off for her today.
In terms of why they were faltering on the boards, I'm wondering what you see, because, again, watching the game in real time, Steph Talbot was the rebounding leader for Australia. So this was not one of these things where you come in and you say, all right, well, look, they've got McGoldrick and Smith on the boards, and that size that Canada is going to struggle to match outside of Kayla Alexander. But that wasn't really what happened here. Well, how do you account for it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that Canada, one of their faults is that they kind of rely on a player like Alexander to just be the key player when it comes to rebounding. Like, they don't, they have a few players who are going to be aggressive and grab those boards. And you've got players like Letitia Mee here, who's got size, and she'll get on the boards and things like that. But, I think the biggest thing is that just like Canada's not aggressive enough on the boards. I think that's the biggest thing. They just need to be a bit more aggressive, because it's like you said, like it wasn't really a size issue in this game. They just need to get in there. I think they give up a little bit. You're not seeing them follow through on their shots and go crash the boards. I think that they really need to work on that, because I think that was a bit of an issue against France as well, is that they did out-rebound France, but it was, like you said, like a lot of it was Kayla Alexander doing a lot of the work there, which she's known for. But I think everybody needs to be a team collective effort. They all need to be doing it. I don't care if you're the smallest person on the court. You need to be going in there and getting it. And I think that Canada just seemed to almost like give up on some of the boards a lot of the time and just kind of say, oh, whatever.
It is interesting. I want to get to Natalie Achonwa also before we move on to 3-on-3. So we're going to be back after the break, continuing a little more 5-on-5 with Hayley McGoldrick and talking all things Canadian women's basketball. I'm Howard Megdal, and you're listening to Locked on Women's Basketball. Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. And yes, the NBA playoffs are over. The WNBA is in hibernation for the next couple of weeks, but FanDuel continues to offer every sports fan every day an opportunity to continue the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open the app, and they will always have bets there available for you. FanDuel this summer is giving all customers a boost or a bonus every single day. There's something for someone every day, all summer long. WNBA will be back there before you know it. There is also, of course, Major League Baseball going on, although, Hayley, that may be a sore subject in Canada right now, given the sell-off of the Toronto Blue Jays. So that aside, definitely. No, it's all good. There are some teams that did not sell off in mass the way the Toronto Blue Jays did this week. And so go over to FanDuel.com and you can start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And tough time for the people who love Bo Bichette, that's for sure, and Vladdy Jr. So,
yeah, like I said, I don't even know who's on the team anymore because they've sold half them off.
Very sad. And Kevin Biggio's with the Dodgers now. I mean, I can't even, all the legacy players. That's, Nepo babies are dead. That's very sad. Very sad. All right. But back to the important task at hand, which is Canada. And Natalie Achonwa, who obviously has made her mark in the W as well, for her to have 7 assists in this one. Again, it felt like, I know it's a loss, but it's a loss to an Australian team that, to my mind, is as good as any team in the world. This is an Australian team that I believe has every chance of beating the United States in a direct head-to-head matchup when the two of them match up. And so for me, it's more like because of the loss to France. And yeah, that second quarter was just brutal. It was just absolutely brutal. And shots were missed that they normally make. But does it feel as if there's been, let us say, a way forward with Achonwa as, I call her secondary distributor, but in this one, she really, the Alyssa Thomas comp is really the one to use, it felt like, in that spot. So it kind of take me through sort of where she fits in all of this.
Yeah, I think one thing about Natalie Achonwa, which I really love about her game, is that she has no problem kind of taking matters into her own hands. And so you look at that game and it's like, okay, you look and she's not doing the primary scoring. She's not putting a lot of points on the boards, but she's crashing the board. She'd have 6 rebounds. Like you said, 7 assists as well. If plays need to be made, she's going to make them. She's a player who is a leader on this team. Absolutely. I mean, she's Canada's first 4-time Olympian in women's basketball. And so she is somebody who's got a lot of experience on this Canada team. She knows what it takes to win. And I think too, she's a player who doesn't want to lose. So when you're in a situation like that and she's like, okay, a play needs to be made, I'm going to play it. I'm going to find the open person and get a basket. Like, I think that she's just somebody who, no matter what Canada needs on the court, she has no problem filling into that role, whether it's defensively, whether it's offensively, like you said, being that primary playmaker, whether it does need to be scoring, she has no problem getting down and using her size and getting in the paint, shoot it. She can shoot, she can do everything. And so, like you said, like that Alyssa Thomas comp a little bit, like I feel like Natalie Achonwa is that player who can do any category you need from her. And you saw that in this game, especially. I know she's always got that tenacity, and she's always a player who wants to come in and win games, and she's no nonsense. But this game especially, you really saw it from her that whatever Canada needs from her, she's going to deliver.
I guess related to that, the first game, 25 turnovers, and Shea Colley had 8 of them. So this doesn't feel so much like Achonwa taking it within the framework of the game. Now, what you said is spot on, right? But it feels like a strategic change for how Canada's running their offense. Do you think this is what we should likely expect going forward?
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, like the turnovers were absolutely killer in that France game. France scored, I believe, 19 points off turnover in that game. And so, again, like the gap was huge at times. France led by, nearly 20 points at times. And so I think that absolutely you want somebody who you're going to be confident when the ball is in their hands also. And I think Shea Colley is a good player, but in those situations when pressure gets to you, I feel like when you make one mistake, then you start making them more because you're flustered. That French defense, a very good team, as you said, they're the reigning Olympic bronze medalists. They're a very good basketball team, but they have really great defense, and that was flustering Shea Colley. And when you're turning over the ball and then the gap is getting bigger and bigger, you don't want that. Natalie Achonwa is absolutely a player who's confident with the ball in her hands. So you're going to want somebody who's not getting those turnovers. You saw that they were forcing Australia to turn the ball over as well, but Canada's still not perfect. They definitely had a few more turnovers than they'd want in this game against Australia as well, but it definitely seemed like they had things a little bit more under control. So I can expect going forward, absolutely, you're going to want somebody like Natalie Achonwa handling the ball, handling those plays, because she's somebody who is a little bit more confident with the ball because she has so much experience. And again, I think she's just a player who she kind of tunes out the noise. She doesn't let a lot get to her. You don't see her getting flustered as often, whereas some players, like you said, they make one turnover and then they're about to make 5 more just because now they're in their head a little bit more. But I feel like she's a player who doesn't get like that as often as some others.
No, Natalie's tough as hell. She's always a pleasure to cover as well. So, but you talk about moving ahead, and nothing's guaranteed here. Now, it's been, in a lot of ways, I know the phrase group of death is overused, but like it's a really challenging group to get out of here. What does Canada need to do? Like, what's the scenario here for Canada to continue to advance?
I mean, they need to win, obviously, and you've seen that Nigeria beat Australia. There's no guarantee in this group when you're in a position when you're down 0-2. This is exactly where they were in Tokyo as well. And I remember they needed Puerto Rico to win or lose by less than 24 points to, I believe, Australia, and that didn't happen. And so they're kind of in this position again where they kind of need to be in that lucky loser spot, and they have to rely on a lot of things to go right. The first thing is first they need to beat Nigeria. Like that obviously, if you lose that game, you have no hope. So first and foremost, you need to come out and win this game. And you did see progress in this Australia game. Like you said, it was a loss, but it was a lot closer of a loss. It was a 5-point loss. Every quarter was actually close. They weren't being held to 2 points in a quarter and letting teams go on 13-point, 22-point scoring runs. They really held it together a lot more. Again, their shooting needs to be so much better. That is like point A. Yeah, turnovers need to be better as well. Defense can be a little better. Rebounding absolutely needs to be better. But like first and foremost, the shooting needs to improve because you're not going to win basketball games if you're only making 21 shots when you're taking 60. I think that's the biggest thing.
It's a concern too because Nigeria's style is specifically geared towards maximizing turnovers. It was high intensity, high pressure, full court press. They didn't just beat Australia. They beat them by 13 points. And so Sandy Brandella told our own Scott Mimosa after the game, Scott's out in Paris covering things for us, just that they were relentless was the word that Sandy used. It's fascinating to see. And it is, like you said, anything but a guarantee. Nigeria may well turn out to have been the class of Group B when this all is said and done. I guess the answer is it's really tough to win a gold medal. Is the short answer to it.
Yeah, and Team USA makes it look so easy. I think that's really a credit to Team USA, just how much talent is on that squad that they make it look so easy winning all these gold medals in women's basketball, because it really is. And I think it really is attesting to everyone else in the world that everyone else in the world is kind of catching up to Team USA. They've really set that standard, and now you're seeing so many other countries come and have these amazing women's basketball teams. I think we're really lucky to live in the era we do right now, that there's so much competition. And I know that Canada is a good basketball team. I think that, we don't have the luxury of being able to have this team play together all the time. I think that would help as well. They don't have a lot of that chemistry, and, there's only 4 players in the WNBA, and none of them are on the same team, and you've got players overseas and and whatnot. You've got a 17-year-old who just graduated high school on this Canada squad. It's a little bit of a mix and match, and I think there's a lot of talent on this squad, but just the level of the bar that Team USA has set is just so much higher. And I love what Canada's doing, and we're continuing to grow as a country, but the bar is up here, and Canada's about right here, right now.
It is going to be fascinating to see how quickly that gap closes, because it will, because clearly we're seeing Canada, and not just Canada, making these tremendous strides. But yes, it's listen, and to your point, the fact is, and we talked about it on yesterday's show, that for Team USA, most of Chelsea Gray's assists are coming to Asia Wilson. Most of Sabrina Ionescu's assists are coming to Brianna Stewart. So you come in with sort of that built-in chemistry, and that is significant. But I also expect there to be more and more Canadian players in the WNBA. So we'll continue to see that going forward. So I want to talk 3-on-3. I want to talk about WNBA to Toronto. We'll do that in segment 3 right after this. I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Back here with Hayley McGoldrick, talking about all things Canadian women's basketball. And 3-on-3 has been off to a better start. You have a piece about it over at the Next. Take me through where the 3-on-3 team is right now, the win over Australia, and what's next.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the 3x3 team, kind of going off the piece of not having that chemistry with the 5-on-5 team, is that this 3x3 team plays in the FIBA women's circuit. So they have amazing chemistry. They just won the Edmonton stop at home a few weeks ago. They won the series title in 2022 and 2023. They're an amazing team. Catherine Plouffe is the #1 individual women's player in the world, and Paige Curzon is #2, and Michelle Plouffe is #3. So 3 of the top 3 women's individual 3x3 players in the world are all Canadian. They have amazing chemistry. They're a great squad. I think every single one of them is a player who is not only going to put points on the board, they're also crashing the boards. They have just their dynamic is amazing. Casey Bosch is the 4th player. I don't want to leave her out because she's incredible as well. But, when you have the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd best players in the world in 3x3, it really speaks for itself. And I mean, they're not perfect. They did lose to Germany today, so they're not going to go undefeated in this run. But I think it really matters having that team that has that chemistry and plays together all the time, because in contrast, you're the defending Olympic champions in 3x3 of the Team USA, and you're looking at the Team USA 3x3 team right now, and they're 0-3 in group play. And yes, right, Hayley Van Lith has played on the circuit, but Dearica Hamby is not a player who's playing on the circuit all the time. She's kind of being thrown in there, and I understand that obviously that's because of Cameron Brink's injury, but even Cameron Brink is not a player who's playing on that circuit all the time as well. So I think it really helps for Canada to be able to have a specific team of 3x3 players. And I mean, the Plouffe sisters played for the senior national team before. They weren't exclusively 3x3 players their entire career. They played in Rio. There are players who have played on Canada's senior national team, but they transitioned to 3x3, and now that's their entire focus. And I think it really shows for Canada that they have a dedicated team that plays on the 3x3 circuit, and it shows because you're looking at their results. I mean, their win over China yesterday was huge, double-digit win. The win over Australia was great. At one time, they were leading by 13 points. It was 15-2. Australia came back a little bit in the end. Credit to them. They have a great squad as well. But I think it just shows that Canada's not the top-ranked team in the world. I think they're #6 in the 3x3 circuit in the world. But they have 3 of the top players. And it just really shows because they can do everything on the court. You're seeing that they have that chemistry. And I think that's the biggest thing, too, just knowing your teammates. They've been playing together for the better part of 2 years now. They've had a few players come in and out, but their core, especially the Plouffe sisters as well. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a cheat code to have twin sisters because there's not a lot of chemistry the way twin sisters have chemistry.
I was going to say it's more than 2 years. The Plouffe sisters have known each other for a very long time, literally since birth.
Yeah, but I think it really shows that Canada has put a lot of effort into having this dedicated team and this dedicated program and just having those reps in the 3x3 circuit, and it's showing on the Olympic stage versus a team like USA. And I hate to use them as an example because obviously it's a struggle for them, and I know that there's so much talent, but I think you can't just take a 5-on-5 player and insert them into 3x3. No. Yeah, there's some players on that team from Team USA who do have experience in the 3x3 circuit, but again, the chemistry, you look at Team USA 5-on-5, and a lot of those players, like you said, the Asia to Chelsea connection or the Stewie to Sabrina connection, that's what you're seeing out of Canada in this 3x3 team.
Do you think Canada is going to take home the gold?
I would love to see it. Like I said, they're not number one in the world. There's a lot of the top-ranked teams in this tournament as well. Like you said, they just lost to Germany, so it's not going to be perfect. I definitely think they can medal. Absolutely. Like, I think 100%, like, the podium is the goal. There's no reason why this team shouldn't. Even the game, it was 19-15, so it wasn't like a blowout game. It wasn't like the game before when they blew out China by double digits. It was a good game. It's a close game, but I think absolutely they have what it takes for sure. And I think the biggest thing is, too, is that all the credit to the 3x3 team from Tokyo that they earned that gold medal, but Canada didn't even play in that Olympics because they weren't eligible. The 3x3 team wasn't eligible to play. So Canada didn't even have a chance to go for a medal in Tokyo. So this is Canada's Olympic debut. And they, of course, want to go for gold when you're a top team in the world. When you're the Women's Circuit Series winners in 2022 and 2023, the standard is a medal. Absolutely. So I think that's 100% what they're aiming for.
It is going to be fascinating to see, and I love the and so you call it 3x3. So is that official? We actually even had this conversation with editors over at the Next about the proper way to write it, and AP style is evolving. It feels like it's happening in real time. We're like present at the birth of it, but that your 3x3 is what I should be calling it from now on.
Yes, I've heard. So I know you know this. For the people who don't know me, I also do a little bit of work with FIBA as well. I've been doing work with FIBA for about 3 years, and the official FIBA way is 3x3. But you also see that people will say now 5x5, and it's like, well, no, it's not 5x5. It's 5-on-5 or 3x3. That is, but I'm not the police. I'm not. If somebody says 3-on-3, I'm not going to say no, it's 3x3. But I know that it's 3x3, so that's how I call it.
Listen, I always learn from you, and now our listeners are learning as well in real time, so it's very much appreciated. So that's what we're going to do going forward. You have officially made the Locked On Women's Basketball change in style for us going forward, so thank you for that. So let's talk as well about Toronto. And, again, I don't mean this as a criticism of Canada, but the preseason game this year, why did it take almost 10 minutes to sell out? Why? That's such a long time. That's, it's brutal. You think there's going to be enough fan support for this team when they show?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know 10 minutes is a long time considering the game in Toronto took, 2 minutes. So the fact that the Edmonton game.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, that's right. It was 10 minutes and then what was it? 2 minutes was the other one?
Yeah. So I know. I think the difference is, number one, that Edmonton's a little harder to get to than Toronto. And also Toronto there's a border right there. There's people who are willing to come in from the East Coast to Toronto versus if you're coming from the East Coast to Edmonton, that's probably like an 8-hour flight. I've never done it, but even to get to Calgary for me is 4 hours. So, but yeah, I think, they've really said, I know you saw, but at the team launch, they really said, this is not just Toronto's team. This is Canada's team. They really want to have not even just preseason games, but regular season games across Canada. They want to have games in Vancouver, in Edmonton or Calgary, in Quebec, maybe Montreal or Quebec City, even on the East Coast. Like, they really want this to be Canada's team, because you've seen with the Raptors that it's really Canada's team. Like, yes, they play out of Toronto, but they've had preseason games in Vancouver. The Raptors are hosting the Wizards on October 6th in Montreal. They're Canada's team, and I think WNBA Toronto really wants to embrace that too, because they know that this is just not about Toronto. This is about, the entire country having an entire team. And I think that's the biggest thing. There's going to be so much support for this team.
And there is so much pent up interest in it, which is just great to see. I mean, I just shake my head because, and you've been in this space, what the experience is, where there's just this trying to convince enough people that there's interest, and then the thing finally happens and it blows up. It wasn't a close call in retrospect. When you look back at it and you say, where has this been for the last 5-10 years? That feels like when it's 2 minutes, when it's 10 minutes. Well, the amount of interest, the fact that tickets sell so quickly, it just feels like it was the most obvious call. And I guess for you, if I can just make it personal for a second, as someone, and you have been a loud and public advocate for this to happen, when it was official, when it came down, like, where were you when you heard about it? What did that feel like for you as somebody who's such a staunch advocate?
Yeah, it was huge for me. And funny enough, I remember because Shireen Ahmed, she is an incredible reporter in Canada. I love Shireen. She's my mentor. Like I always say, she's the whole reason I'm here. She's the person who opened the door for me to get to Sportsnet and start covering the WNBA. Like, I could not say more incredible things about her. She's an amazing person. And I remember that when she broke the news, even not that the team was official, but even that the team was rumored to be coming with the Kilmer Group and Larry Tannenbaum and all that. I remember she was texting me, and then the news broke, and then she actually told me, she said, I meant to tell you earlier before everyone else, but then my son was learning how to drive, and then that kind of took my brain capacity. And I said, you know what, totally fair, because I'm sure my parents said the exact same thing when I was learning to drive. But it's huge. And then when the team was actually announced, I remember for some reason I happened to be up at 5 a.m. when she dropped the news, and I just remember being like, oh my God, it's happening. Like, this is something we've wanted for so long. And I think especially too, seeing the PWHL and seeing the progress of the PWHL and how amazing that was. And Canada's lucky enough to have 3 teams in the PWHL. And that's just the start, because they're still all Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, really, you know, Ontario, Quebec centric. There's going to definitely be West Coast additions to the league, and hopefully maybe East Coast additions as well. But I think really seeing how well the PWHL did, the support behind that, a lot of us women's basketball fans were kind of saying, okay, like, when is it our turn? You know, we've seen the growth of our national team. We've seen the growth of players in the WNBA every year. You know, it might only be 1 player a year, but we're slowly growing. We're slowly getting more. You're seeing more players in the NCAA. And so when I remember like being announced, like, it didn't even feel real at first. And I think it still doesn't feel real, just because while 2026 is around the corner, it is still, you know, a year and a half away until tip off. And I think we're kind of lucky in the sense that we'll get to watch Golden State kind of go through the process first and know what to expect when it comes to an expansion draft and how that works and everything like that. But it's huge for us, because for so long it kind of was like, when is it going to be our turn? And you've seen other leagues like the NWSL, you know, there's so many incredible soccer players from Canada. You look at our women's national team, I mean, with everything that went on with their 6-point deduction, and they've still come out and advanced to the quarterfinals. They won all 3 of their group matches, which is also huge considering how they did in the Women's World Cup. I won't get into soccer. I know that's for the equalizer, but I think it's huge that, you know, the NWSL is a league that there's so many Canadians who would really, really wanted a team, and it just never expanded here. And of course, we have the NSL coming next season, but you know, that's something we always wanted expansion in Toronto, and we never got it. So for expansion to actually happen in the WNBA is huge. And, you know, it kind of felt like it was happening when the whole charter flight thing was announced, because that would have been the biggest thing. Like, trying to get to Canada on commercial flights would have been horrific. Like, there's no way. Like, with the even, I mean, I was part of trying to get to All-Star, and it took me 18 hours to get to Phoenix because of everything that happened. So I can't imagine a team needing to go play a game and that happening to them. So when the charter flight thing happened, it kind of was like, okay, that was kind of really the last roadblock to us getting a team in Toronto, other than, of course, the funding. But you knew that there was people like Larry Tannenbaum who were willing to invest in this. And so once that charter flight thing was announced, it was like, okay, I think this is happening. And then here we are.
It's a glorious thing to see. It is a moment of growth, a moment of excitement and opportunities. Hayley McGoldrick, I am delighted that we get to learn about them from you. So thank you for that. And to our listeners, thank you for making us your first listen every day. I have great news. There is a dramatic upgrade in the host chair tomorrow, because Jackie Powell will be the one taking you home into the weekend, talking to Noah Dalzell, who was at the Next and is now full-time over at SB Nation. So until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Thursday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, you were excellent as expected. So I am